I've spent many years in this room, surrounded by books.
I am 88 years old. 88 winters have passed over my head. I have buried friends, watched cities change their faces, seen letters turn into emails, and conversations turn into notifications. I have held my firstborn child in trembling hands, and later held the hands of those I loved as they took their last breath. And if there is one enemy that has stolen more joy from my life than poverty, illness, or failure, it is overthinking. You might expect a man my age to speak about war, heartbreak, or loss as life's greatest thief. But no, the quiet habit of thinking too much, of replaying, predicting, doubting, and dissecting every possibility, has caused more silent destruction than any visible disaster. When I was young, I believed overthinking meant I was intelligent, careful, responsible. I told myself I was being wise by considering every outcome before making a move. But what I was truly doing was standing still while life kept walking. Let me tell you something most young people don't understand. Life does not reward the most cautious thinker. It rewards the courageous doer. In my 20s, I fell in love with a woman who laughed like sunlight. She would look at me as if I already was the man I hoped to become. I wanted to marry her. I imagined our home, our children, our future. But I thought too much. What if I wasn't financially stable enough? What if her parents refused? What if I disappointed her? What if I failed as a husband? I told myself I would wait until the right time. The right time never arrived. She married someone else, not because he was smarter, not because he was richer, but because he asked. While I was calculating risks, he was taking action. Overthinking disguises itself as responsibility, but often it is fear wearing a suit. Fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being judged. And here is what I learned decades later. The pain of regret weighs far more than the pain of rejection. Rejection stings for days. Regret echoes for decades. In my 30s, I was offered a small business opportunity by a friend. It required investment and risk. I analyzed it from every angle. I wrote lists of advantages and disadvantages. I consulted people who had never built anything themselves. I waited for certainty. Certainty never came. My friend moved forward without me. That small shop became a chain. He retired early. I continued working, telling myself I had made the safe choice. Safe choices are not always safe for your dreams. Overthinking convinces you that you are protecting yourself. In reality, you are protecting yourself from growth. Growth is uncomfortable. It demands decision. It requires stepping into uncertainty. But life itself is uncertain. Waiting for clarity before acting is like waiting for the ocean to calm before learning to swim. It will never be perfectly calm. When I reached my 40s, I noticed another pattern. I overthought conversations. I would replay arguments in my head long after they ended. I would imagine responses I should have given. I would analyze someone's tone, their expression, the pause between their words. Days would pass, and I would still be carrying a sentence someone spoke carelessly. Meanwhile, they had forgotten it entirely. Overthinking creates problems that do not exist outside your mind. You build a courtroom in your head. You become the prosecutor, the defense lawyer, and the judge. You examine every word. You assume hidden meanings. You invent intentions. And you exhaust yourself. Peace does not disappear because life is complicated. Peace disappears because your thoughts refuse to rest. When my first child was born, I thought constantly about the future. What if I fail him? What if the world becomes worse? What if I cannot provide enough? I lost sleep worrying about events that had not happened and might never happen. My son did not need a father who predicted every storm. He needed a father who was present in the sunshine. Overthinking robs you of the present moment. You cannot enjoy dinner because you are calculating tomorrow's problems. You cannot laugh freely because you are analyzing yesterday's mistakes. You cannot love deeply because you are predicting how it might end. Life happens now. Overthinking lives in yesterday and tomorrow. In my 50s, my health began to shift. Minor pains became reminders of mortality. I started reading about diseases. I interpreted every headache as something serious. I imagined worst-case scenarios before visiting a doctor. Half of what I feared never existed. Your mind can become a factory of imagined disasters. Let me share something important. The human brain evolved to detect danger. It scans for threats. But in modern life, most threats are not wild animals. They are social situations, career choices, and uncertainties. Yet your brain reacts as if your survival depends on solving everything immediately. So it loops, it analyzes, it worries. But you are not being chased by a tiger. You are being chased by your own thoughts. In my 60s, I began losing friends. Funerals became more frequent. Every loss made me reflect on how quickly life moves. I noticed something heartbreaking. The people who seemed most at peace were not those who avoided mistakes. They were those who accepted them. They did not sit for years dissecting what could have been. They adjusted. They forgave themselves. They continued. Overthinking keeps you chained to moments that are already gone. You cannot edit the past by replaying it. You cannot control the future by imagining it. You can only choose your next step. When I was 70, my granddaughter asked me why I always pause before answering big questions. I told her, because I've learned that thinking is valuable, but overthinking is costly. There is a difference. Thinking seeks understanding. Overthinking seeks control. Understanding is healthy. Control is an illusion. Young people often believe that if they just think hard enough, long enough, they can avoid all mistakes. But mistakes are not signs of failure. They are proof that you are participating in life. A ship in harbor is safe, but ships are not built to stay in harbor. At 88, I do not fear making the wrong decision as much as I fear making no decision at all. Indecision is a silent thief. It steals time. And time is the only currency you cannot earn back. Let me tell you what overthinking has truly cost me. It cost me spontaneous trips I never took. It cost me words of affection I delayed. It cost me opportunities I postponed. It cost me peace on nights that should have been restful. And what did it give me in return? An illusion of control, that is all. You believe that by analyzing every angle, you are reducing risk. But you are also reducing courage. Courage is not the absence of thought. It is action despite incomplete information. The younger generation faces more choices than we ever did. Careers, cities, relationships, lifestyles. Endless options create endless comparisons. Endless comparisons create paralysis. Choice without decision becomes a burden. When you stand at a crossroads too long, the ground beneath you does not become clearer. It becomes worn. I have learned to ask myself a simple question when I feel stuck. Will this matter in 5 years? Most worries fail that test. Will this embarrassing moment define me in 5 years? Will this minor mistake ruin my entire future? Will this awkward conversation echo forever? Usually the answer is no. Perspective is the medicine for overthinking. Another lesson. Your thoughts are not facts. They are interpretations. You assume someone dislikes you because they seemed distant. Perhaps they were tired. You assume you will fail because you failed before. Perhaps you are now wiser. You assume you are not ready. Perhaps readiness comes through beginning. Your mind tells stories. Not all stories are true. In my later years, I began practicing something simple: action within 24 hours. If something important needed to be done, I would take a step within one day, not the entire journey, just one step. Call the person, submit the application, start the first paragraph, schedule the appointment. Action interrupts overthinking. Movement dissolves mental fog. You cannot think your way into confidence. You behave your way into it. I have met brilliant young men and women who are trapped not by lack of ability, but by excessive analysis. They wait until they feel perfectly prepared. They wait until fear disappears. They wait until they are certain. Certainty is rare. Progress is available. At 88, I wake up grateful for ordinary mornings. I no longer waste hours debating small matters. If I want to call someone, I call. If I want to say thank you, I say it. If I want to forgive, I forgive quickly. Because I have learned that hesitation builds walls, and walls isolate you from the very life you are trying to protect. Overthinking also damages relationships. When you constantly analyze your partner's words, you create distance. When you doubt their intentions without evidence, you plant seeds of mistrust. When you rehearse imaginary arguments, you prepare for battles that never needed to exist. Love requires vulnerability, not calculation. Trust grows from openness, not suspicion. In my youth, I believed intelligence meant having all the answers before moving forward. Now I know wisdom means accepting that you never will. Life is not a math equation. It is a story unfolding in real time. You cannot pause it to analyze every chapter. The irony is this: the decisions I agonized over rarely shaped my destiny as much as the simple habits I practiced daily: kindness, discipline, patience, gratitude. These mattered more than perfect strategic thinking. If I could sit across from my younger self, I would say, "You are allowed to be wrong. You are allowed to try. You are allowed to learn publicly. Embarrassment will not kill you. Inaction will slowly suffocate you." I have seen people remain stuck in jobs they dislike for decades because they overthought the transition. I have seen relationships fade because someone analyzed instead of expressing. I have seen dreams shrink because someone waited for a flawless moment. There is no flawless moment. There is only this one. Your mind is a powerful servant, but a dangerous master. If you let it dominate every decision with fear-based scenarios, it will shrink your world. Limit your thinking to what is useful. Release what is speculative. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me act wisely, or is it keeping me frozen? At 88, I do not count my life by how carefully I thought. I count it by how fully I lived. And I lived most fully in the moments when I stopped calculating and started trusting. Trusting my preparation, trusting my resilience, trusting that even if I failed, I would recover. Failure did not destroy me. Hesitation did more damage. Young man, young woman, listen carefully. The world does not belong to the ones who think the longest. It belongs to the ones who move with thoughtful courage, make decisions, adjust along the way, learn quickly, forgive yourself faster, silence the inner critic that demands perfection. Replace it with a quiet voice that says, "Begin." When you are 88, you will not wish you had analyzed more. You will wish you had embraced more. Embrace risk. Embrace uncertainty. Embrace imperfect beginnings. Because overthinking does not ruin your life in a single dramatic moment. It ruins it quietly by convincing you to wait. And life does not wait.